our goal is to change our reading behaviors, right? And before you do that, you have to begin by changing the way you view reading a book. Now, track with me here. Imagine that you're at your favorite bookstore and you've got your coffee and you're really eager to find a new book to read for the weekend ahead. Okay, so I've got my 5 books here, and these are all books that, just like you, I bought at a bookshelf, kind of an impulse buy, and I saw it and it grabbed me. So you pick up a book, and just for a minute, imagine like what causes you to decide to read a book that you find. I bought this at Barnes & Noble, and it was an impulse buy. I'd never heard of this book before, but you know what intrigued me is probably the same as you. You know, you want to see if they deliver on their promise. This one says, work better, work smarter, and less. And here's how. So how do you decide if you want to buy this book? You pick it up, you look at the cover, you might look at the back cover, see the reviews, read the inside flap. Some of you might hop online, read reviews that other readers have read about the book. I like to even kind of flip through and read the first few pages to see if I like the flow of the book. You know, there's all different reasons, but for the most part, it's an impulse buy, right? And so you pick it up, you buy it, and then you take it home with you. Now, quick question. Why did you buy this book? Obvious, right? Is you want to see if it delivers on its promise. In this particular case, is a book about productivity. It's actually a book about 4-day work weeks, and I'll talk more about it in just a minute, but you want to see if it delivers on its promise that it says on the cover, that if you read this book, you're going to work better, work smarter, and work less. And here's how, right? Now, here's why this is important. You also have to think of the reasons you didn't that didn't grab you, or the things that don't matter as much in this. Are you buying this book because you're really excited to read all the testimonials and the stories and hear of different companies who have had more productivity because of this strategy? Not really. You know, the book is full of those, but that's not really the reason that you bought it, right? Are you buying it because the author is a gifted writer and you love how they tell a story? You know, in self-development books and leadership books and any career kind of focused book, you're not necessarily buying it for the writing style. You're buying it for the content. You're buying it for a different reason than you'd buy your favorite fiction novelist's book, whose book you might buy regardless of what it's even about, just because you like the writing style. You are buying this to get the main points out. So success in reading a book in this case is, I've read the book and I know what it's about. I've got the main concepts, the main wisdom, and they're in my brain now, right? Failure is you bought this book and it sits on your bookshelf and a friend comes over one day and says, hey, what's that book about? And you say, you know, I bought it, but I never actually read it. I got too busy for it. Or I read it, but I don't really remember what it was about. That would be failure, right? So what is success? I want us to define our goal, because that's really going to drive our approach moving forward. The goal is to gain the main points of the book and then to retain those main points so that you'll always remember them. Gain and retain, okay? Keep that in mind, because that's the foundation here, and that's what we're going to use as we move forward into this next session. Let's keep going. Okay, so you should have your 5 books, your next 5 books set aside, or your first 5 books that you're going to do this strategy with. And these are 5 books that I loved. This feels like reading Rainbow a little bit, but these are 5 books I use this strategy with. And remember, our goal is to gain and retain the wisdom. That's it, to gain and retain the wisdom. So just an example to show you how this looks, and we're going to do some math here. This is shorter. This is a book about the rise of the 4-day work week. We're going to use this book as an example. This book is just around 240 pages, all right? And for some reason, that seems to be like the magic number for a lot of leadership and self-development books, 240 pages. I don't know the math behind it. There's probably book publishing stats that say why that number works, but maybe it's because anything longer than that, we're going to be too intimidated to read. If it's 100 pages, we're probably not going to pay $28 for it, right? So 240 pages. So just do some quick math. Say your reading pace is right at 30 pages an hour. Say you can do 2 minutes a page. Then it would take you what? 8 hours of non-distracted reading to read this book, right? If you've got kids, that 8 hours might turn into 16 because you get pulled away from reading. If you've got social media, then that 8 hours might turn into 80, right? So let's just say, though, that you're able to finish this book because for the next 8 days, you wake up early and you're going to spend 1 hour of completely dedicated time to reading it, and you knock it out. At that rate, you spend an hour a day, you could get to 45 books a year by doing that. So to get to 100, you would actually have to do that same reading methodology for 2 hours and 12 minutes every single day, non-distracted reading to get to 100. So there's your strategy. Thank you guys for taking my course. I'm just kidding. That doesn't work. That's unrealistic. I'm guessing that you signed up for this course because you don't have 2 hours and 12 minutes every day to read a book. Otherwise, you'd probably be reading more than I am. That's way more than I read every single day, and that's not even a necessary principle for you to adopt. And here's why. Because our goal is not to read every page of this book. Remember? The reason we bought this book was not to read every page. It was to gain and retain the wisdom for it. Do we need to read every page of this book to do that? In most cases, the answer is no. In fact, in this particular case, I only read about 20% of the book, and yet I was able to take away all of the main concepts, the main principles, the main wisdom from this book that I still have with me now. This is a book all about the shift for companies towards a 4-day work week because they're finding that it creates higher retention for employees. There's less burnout. They're finding even that there's higher creativity and that there's actually higher productivity in companies that work 4 days versus 5. And the reason for that is because the longer work week, employees are tired and they end up wasting a lot of time. And the philosophy here is instead of wasting what comes out to about a day of work a week because you're non-productive, we're just going to give that back to you, and it causes employees to be more motivated, to be more focused in the time that they have because they're given a 3-day weekend. So it's a fascinating book. I got all of that out of reading just 20% of the book, and it was still influential, still impactful. I still remember all of it, but I didn't have to spend all of the time. I didn't have to spend 8 hours of non-distracted reading to get there. So that brings us to the million-dollar question, which is this: how much of the book do we need to read to gain and retain most of the wisdom? Because in most cases, it's not every page. In fact, it's rare to find a book that I really feel like I need to read every page of the book to get the main concepts and the main principles and the main wisdom out of it. And if our goal is to gain and retain wisdom, then we don't have to. And so what holds us back often in reading is we'll buy a book and then we feel like we need to read every page. We view a book like a movie, where a movie, it doesn't make sense if you don't see the whole thing. You know, a book is a little different though. It's not written with the same purpose. And so our natural assumption is that we have to read cover to cover, but do we actually have to do that to accomplish our goal? Because all of these books were great books that I read, and all of these books were books that I didn't read every single word of. And I didn't need to still get the main takeaways out of them. I was watching a webinar several years ago with somebody from the book publishing world, and they were talking about writing and publishing, and they shared a few interesting stats, and there's one that I won't ever forget, and it's this: the average reader stops reading before the end of chapter 4. Like, most people that start a book never get through chapter 4. In fact, I think it was only like 25% of people that start a book over 200 pages actually finish it. And so we've all been guilty of this, right? I mean, how many times have you started a book and then you kind of forgot about it, you set it down, you never went back to it, and that book almost becomes like Wheezy from Toy Story. If you've ever seen Toy Story, who hasn't seen Toy Story, right? The little penguin toy that Andy played with for years and years, and then one day he sets him on the shelf and then just forgets about him and he just collects dust. That becomes so many books, right? As we get distracted, we get busy, we buy another book and we forget about Wheezy on the bookshelf, right? That's so many of the books that we have. Either way, that's an important fact that most people don't read past chapter 4. Now, publishers know that, and publishers keep that in mind. And here's what they do as a result: is a lot of publishing houses, when they're creating a book, and again, this is a nonfiction thing, they will put the main content, the meat and potatoes of the book in those first few chapters. And they do that for two reasons. One, so that if you do stop reading before chapter 4, you at least got some of the main stuff, right? And then two, they want to hook you in. They want you to realize that there's so many important concepts, so much knowledge in this book that you can't stop reading. And so they put the great stuff at the very beginning. And it's like the mall food court guy who hands out samples of Cajun chicken. He's giving a sample of the best chicken that they have in hopes that by eating it, you stay around for the whole meal, right? So that's what book publishers are doing. And that means this. That means a few things. They're assuming that most people that read aren't going to finish the book. In fact, in a way, they almost don't expect you to read every page of the book. They want you to. They want you to stick around, but they're realistic. So the publisher's goal is for you to buy the book and to open the book, and hopefully you'll read at least the first few chapters. But they're also realistic that most people that buy it aren't going to stick around. But for a publisher, success is not how many people finish the book. It's how many people bought the book. Okay, so because of that, it's really important that we recognize that just like the mall food court sample guy, they're taking into account that there's a lot of people that are going to buy the book and then just sample the book. So they need to make sure the book is written in a way that even if you sample it, you still get the main stuff. So here's another $1 million question. If the book publisher isn't focused on putting absolutely essential material on every page of the book, then why are we focused on reading every page of the book? The short answer is you don't need to. You don't need to read every word of every page to get the main wisdom out of a book. And that's coming from an author. That's coming from a writer who writes books and hopes that every reader reads every page, but I'm also realistic. I know that we live in the quick blog post, Snapchat, YouTube video world of 10 seconds to grab my attention or you're gone. And so with that in mind, what I'm going to show you how to do is how to gain the main wisdom, the main points, the main concepts out of these books, and then put it back on your bookshelf and move on to the next one and do it again and again and do it 100 times over without having to dedicate 2 hours and 12 minutes of every day of your life to do that. I'm going to show you how to do it efficiently and effectively and in a way that you can remember all of the notes that you took and you can draw on them whenever you need. So get your pen ready. Let's begin.